to the second hour of news and views on Salam Media. And let's just remind you that this hour is sponsored by Africa Muslims Agency, a beacon of hope to communities for over 35 years in Africa and beyond. And we kick off the second hour by speaking with a social activist. He's Imraahn Mukaddam. He's based in Elsies River on the Western Cape, and he's going to be talking to us about the horrors of shootings and killings in the Western Cape, but this is the horror of killings of innocent children in that part of the country. And really, this is, I agree with you, Imraahn, a deepening crisis. And the all important question is what on earth is the authorities, is government, is SAPS, is the Minister of Police, and all of these fancy ministers with their fancy titles doing about the situation. Salaam alaikum to you. Welcome to the program.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Yes, the report came out yesterday from the Western Cape Health Department around children affected by violence, especially stabbing and gunshot wounds. And we find the statistics alarming. Since in the past 90 days, 1,600 children were affected by violent crime, either through stabbing or gunshot wounds. So these statistics really gives an indication of the crisis that we have with regards to violence against children and children being caught up in violence. We also, yesterday started the first day of the 16 days of activism against violence against women and children. So clearly, we are dealing with a serious challenge as communities on the Cape Flats, especially.
Imran, it's a very worrying situation indeed, and you so rightly say the 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children started yesterday. We have these awareness campaigns year in and year out. And if anything, I find that perhaps it's just being reported more, but it seems as if violence in the country, very especially in the Western Cape and in townships around the country, seems to be on the upscale. Earlier on, I spoke to someone from Samnet, and they were calling for stronger alcohol legislation, supporting Limpopo's SAPS to push for stricter control to combat GBV and other such issues. And they're saying they agree with that the Limpopo SAPS to limit um, the buying of alcohol, limit the time that you can shop for alcohol, because the longer those trading hours are stretched, the more people have access to alcohol and other such substances. And this issue is creating a horrible knock on effect in our communities. So, would you say it is also the alcohol issue? Gang violence, violence amongst gangsters for territory to control certain territories, and also substance abuse, prostitution, kidnappings, and all of those heinous crimes that we're being plagued by in this country.
Exactly, I think there's a direct correlation between the availability of alcohol trading, and the level of violence that we're seeing. There's a direct correlation. Many reports have been written over the years that speaks to most of the violent crimes happen on weekends, very close to shebeens or taverns, and then we're also finding, child abuse by parents and caregivers under the influence of alcohol. So there's a direct correlation between alcohol trading, alcohol availability, and the level of violence that we see, homicides as well as violence against women, and as this report states, violence against children, that is, becoming quite alarming. So yes, the alcohol industry, and the sale of alcohol and the prevalence of alcohol, yeah, it's a contributory factor, major contributory factor. And then, of course, the contestation for drug territories. We also see new drugs, cocaine, heroin, much more lucrative than the very cheap methamphetamine tick. So with the new drugs, of which we don't know what the impact is on the psychology of the users. Um, you know, we're seeing that problem also taking on enormous proportions on the Cape Flats, especially. And then we have the phenomenon of very young children getting involved in gangs at much earlier than what was previously the case. And we're seeing children as young as 10, 8, 12 actively engaging in violence amongst each other as children, but also acting on behalf of gangs and being part of gangs. So, um, with the focus being on children and prevention, I do believe, as you asked earlier, that the state intervention, especially social intervention, social crime intervention, is very inadequate. We can do a lot more. We can do a lot more,
Absolutely.
and not enough is being done to prioritize children at risk and youth at risk, from departments of social development, Department of Health, Department of Community Safety, SAPS. So it's a whole of government approach, and we need, to emphasize that children are the most vulnerable in our society. We see how children are affected in Gaza, in war zones, and similarly, the war on the Cape Flats, it's predominantly, we're seeing that children are the most affected, and in most cases, also the victims of this ongoing war between gangs.
Okay, Imran's picture has just frozen. Are you there, Imran? Can you
Yeah,
hear
I,
me?
I'm here. I'm
Okay,
here. I'm here.
okay, let me just come in there. You talk about this war on our children in the Western Cape and other townships around the country. And I'm kind of wondering, has this not got to do with the issue of unemployment, amongst our youth? That's one of the factors. The other factor is that our government is sitting on its hands, despite all of the numerous promises they've made to youth to create alternatives and employment for them. Because if the employment situation is addressed, perhaps we can halve this problem of gangsterism, drug addiction, and violence in townships. What I also find very disturbing is we've had an outbreak of poisoning from supposedly snacks being bought from spaza shops, and upwards of 25 youth or children have been killed around the country after having ingested those snacks from spaza shops. There's been a huge cry for government to address the situation, and lo and behold, Cyril Ramaphosa was on mainstream media and said that an investigation is underway. Spaza shops have been closed down, and all sorts of measures are being put in place to address this situation. But this huge scourge of the killings and gang warfare and the freely available sale of illicit drugs and alcohol in townships hasn't been addressed. And not unless and until those issues are not addressed will the crime rates not come down. It is silly season, and we're already seeing the brazen crime that is being perpetrated on innocent people, hijackings, kidnappings, gangs of four and more brazenly shooting their way into the houses of innocent people, terrorizing them, killing them, and walking away with all of their, robbing the families blind as well. That is our problem, Imran.
Yes, we're living in an extremely violent society as South Africans. And I think the state lacks the capacity to really address this. We are currently busy with spiritual crime prevention, trying to get the faith-based leaders involved, trying to speak to, pastors and imams and, whichever faith leaders there are, to see if from that perspective there can be some intervention, but it has to be a whole of society approach to violence. And I think even at schools, our teachers are vulnerable. They're being exposed to so much abuse from violent children coming from violent environments, and the cycle continues, and the interventions are having to happen at a much earlier stage in the child's development than what was previously acceptable. So we are dealing with a whole host of issues as a society, Julie, that requires the kind of intervention that we saw at Kudisa. We need to get together and have a real relook at what kind of society we as South Africans are building from the faith-based, education, from human rights value. I just took the report as a human rights monitor. I took the report on child violence and asked our human rights, South African Human Rights Commission to also get involved in the there is clearly an issue of human rights as well. And as a human rights-based democracy, we clearly are failing as a society and as government, and overall we have to do so much more. But it is also important that we involve all our stakeholders, and business has a role to play as well in terms of ensuring that um, they develop a core of youth that can be absorbed into industry, and the core of youth that is becoming so despondent, the early dropouts that we see at grade 6 and 7, at the ages of 12 and 11 years old and 10 years old, kids are dropping out of school. Also, one of the things that we've been looking at is how do we hold parents accountable for violent young people and violent youth. And that is also another area where we can actually intervene as the state, holding parents accountable for the failure to address, especially school dropouts, which is the major cause of a lot of the violence that we see, because these young children become so vulnerable to be absorbed into gangs, but also because of the level of despondency. Poverty is really a driver, as you say. Poverty is really a driver, as you say, that the social conditions of society um, creates the driver for despondency and also resorting to crime as a last resort, unjustifiably so. But yes, so there are all these issues that we need to address, but there are solutions also. The solutions could be intervention, family interventions, more social workers, early identification of problem youth much earlier than what we do intervene now. The state only intervenes in youth at risk once they've committed a crime, not before then. Diversion programs are also developed only after they've committed a crime. So we need those interventions to be a lot more focused, a lot more training needs to be done with social workers, with teachers, with uh, priests, with pastors, with imams,
So Imran,
to help.
let me
So,
come in
so,
here.
so I'm saying
Let
that
me come
there
in
are
here.
there are solutions.
Okay, let me come in here, Imran. Are you being heard? Because you are making such relevant points. And if all of those issues are addressed as you are hoping they would be, um, gosh, we'll be in a totally different society altogether. Because you've touched on a few very important points here, and that is um, holding parents responsible. But if the parents themselves are not functional, how do you hold them responsible? We have issues around dysfunctional families or dysfunctional parents cannot be the role models we want them for our youth, our lost youth. Um, so the cycle is so vicious. Where do we start? And are you being heard? And I still say, a lot of the activists that I talk to, and a lot of politicians that I talk to, always call out uh, the community, civil society, and big businesses to get involved as well. But the politicians are earning fat cat salaries. They should be more proactive. They need to make sure that these policies are put in place and they need to drive them. It is our politicians that are failing us.
Yes,
Imran.
I think that is, um, our problem as society is that we're waiting for government to fix this for us, and government is self-interest driven. So your politicians, your officials, your people working in government departments, they are the ones that
Okay, Imran's picture has frozen again. Yeah, Imran, can we
yeah,
just wrap up because your
yeah,
sound is not
yeah.
great?
Now I've got calls coming in and it's interrupting with
Okay.
the reception here. So what I'm saying is that our politicians and our state officials and our government departments, there needs to be a culture shock and a culture change there that focuses on the needs of society more than on the salary and the 25th and the 15th of the month, and that needs to change. Our police, our social departments, our law enforcement. Uh, it has to be much more than a paycheck at the end of the month. It has to be about how do they make a difference, and how do they deliver on the mandates that they that
Okay,
they.
Imran, we need to leave it there. Unfortunately, we're going to have to
I'm
wrap
so
up.
sorry.
And no problem at all. Always a pleasure talking with you. You're saying that the politicians need to be shocked out of this bubble that they're living in. But if 1,700 children that have been reportedly treated for gunshot and stab wounds in the Western Cape, if that doesn't shock them to the reality of what's happening in the townships, then nothing will. But listen, we will take up on this issue another time closer, possibly in another couple of days' time. And I also want to have a discussion with you in the near future about the astronomical pricing of the Hajj 2025. I was shocked out of my socks, and I'm sure you
Yeah.
you have lots to say on that. We're going to leave it here. Thank you indeed for your input. Till the next time, as always, keep safe. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for your efforts, for your concern, for your activism for our community. You are, of course, not only a social activist, but also the CEO of Inspire Network. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Walaikum salam and shukran for having us.
We are here in the middle of a Zahra neighborhood. The whole neighborhood is already destroyed. More than 17 towers are down. Here, as you can see, the firefighters trying their best to help. The people are still under the rubble. A lot of the people.
Join Hamza on his exclusive South African tour as he shares his personal experiences, never before seen footage, and powerful insights on the ongoing genocide in Gaza. This is more than just a talk. It's an invitation to witness Gaza through the lens of Hamza Sha'alan. Don't miss this opportunity to meet the photojournalist who brought Gaza's pain and perseverance to the world in its darkest moments. Follow Salam Media on social media pages for more on this tour and be part of the conversation.